There we go. Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I was having nightmares about there being 2 people in the audience, so this is a much bigger turnout than I was anticipating. So thank you very much for coming along. I'm very excited to be here today at the Nottingham Digital Summit as well. I'm very thankful to have been asked. As Maddie mentioned, I used to work for Hallam, and they're an absolutely great bunch. So to be asked by them if I'd like to come back, it was just really lovely. So today, as you can see, I'm going to be talking a little bit about why links aren't everything and other lessons that can be learnt from traditional PR. But before I get into that, hi everyone, I'm Alice, nice to meet you. A little bit about me. So I actually trained as a journalist. I was doing everything from broadcast, print, magazine, multimedia journalism. I was up in Sheffield, running up and down the high street, putting microphones in people's faces, asking them questions about politics and waiting to see what profanities they would reply to me with. So after 3 years of doing that, I sort of realised journalism might not be the track for me. So I went to PR. More specifically, I went to digital PR. So over my time in digital, I was building links on all the big names, The Sun, The Mirror, Hello OK, Glamour Bustle, all the big boys. But because I was an agency, I was working across such a huge range of industries as well. So beauty, fashion, health, energy, and my personal favourite, the travel industry. Now, there were clearly some industries that I was more suited to. I remember in my first job, one day, some of the girls came in who worked on the beauty and fashion account with me. And they were like, oh my God, guys, I saw the most incredible dupe for that Charlotte Tilbury cream last night. And one of the other girls was like, oh my God, no, I saw the dupe for that Chloe bag. And I just sort of sat there and it was straight over my head. So it became apparent to me that maybe beauty and fashion wasn't my realm. And I sort of figured I'm going to have to specialise at some point. And for me, that came in the form of travel. Travel's what I love, so I moved over to TUI, which I absolutely love. But that meant I moved from digital PR into the world of traditional, which was something a little different. That said, during my short time in traditional PR, I've already learned a lot that I think could be applied to digital strategies. So when I was approached with the opportunity to do a talk here at the Digital Summit in front of all of you digital folk, I thought to myself, if only you knew. If only you knew the power of the dark side. The dark side, of course, being traditional. So yes, there is life beyond links. It's kind of shocking, I know. But what does a day look like when, as a digital PR, it's not consumed with emailing journalists and begging them for a link, or despairing when they add on a no-follow or an affiliate, or even worse, when they tell you their publication just don't link at all, even though their colleague gave you a link last week, so it's got to be a lie, right? Well, let me tell you a little something. Links are valuable, but they're not everything. Turn the digital PR drama up there, because I know that was quite a controversial statement. But I promise you, there is so much more value that you can give your clients than just links. And once you get over that hurdle of just KPIing yourself on links, there's a lot more we can all learn from the ways of traditional PR. And that will certainly elevate your digital PR strategy. So it's time to do some traditional PR myth debunking. So I'm going to start with one of my personal favourites, the little black book. What is it worth, if anything, in a digital world? Now, I've seen plenty of tweets on Twitter over the years saying having contacts in journalism doesn't really matter. And I get it, because I also built hundreds and hundreds of links without meeting a journalist in person, so why even bother, right? Well, when you're emailing a journalist, you need to stand out. We all know that. How do we do it? Well, in digital PR, we normally start with a cringy Gmail profile photo. Thanks to Mum and Dad for their bathroom for supporting me with that photo in particular. Then we follow it up with a clickbaity headline. Please open this. My KPI is really high and I'm a bit desperate. And then follow it up with several emojis, relevant or not. You know, add the aubergine in there, you're in for a good one. So those are the ways that we currently do it. But have you actually ever thought about going and meeting a journalist in real life? Because that's a surefire way to stand out. Because meeting a journalist is much more valuable than just sending them an email saying, I recently read your article in this publication and found it really interesting. Please give me some coverage now. It doesn't always work that way, because media meets are genuinely valuable. It's not just about going out for a fancy lunch. It's only a little bit about going out for a fancy lunch. Because ultimately, journalists who are in your side will be able to help you in your time of need. We've all had a campaign that's not gone to plan, right? Sometimes you just really need that first piece of coverage, that first link, and then the rest of it rolls in. So if you've got those contacts, reach out to them and they can help. Now, of course, you can build relationships with journalists by simply being helpful, responding to their journalist requests, being super quick, but not every journalist is constantly pumping out media requests for you to respond to. Sometimes you have to go up to them and approach them and ask them if they're willing to let you learn from them. Ask them what they're looking for, what content works best for them, how long do they like their pitches to be, what day do they want their pitches to come in. If they like to post lighter content on the weekend, do they need your pitch in by a Thursday? What time do they need it in? What time do they meet up with their editors? What time do they pitch those stories to them? What should you even put in the subject line? Each journalist can tell you exactly what they need you to do to help you maximize your chances. And if you need some more evidence, well, I'll give you an example. I recently met up with a well-known journalist who writes for several publications, regional publications across the UK. He's a syndicator. I didn't actually have to leave my house for this one, which was great. I could stay in my pajamas a little bit longer. We met virtually, and it cost my company absolutely nothing. For any digital PRs in the room, his name was Neil Shaw. I'm sure that name will spark some memory for digital PRs in here. He's very popular in digital PR. I remember in my first job, someone came dressed as him for Halloween, goatee and all. So he really has a reputation. So I can confirm he's real. He's not just a myth. He's not some guy created by Reach PLC. He's a real man. And he told me something super interesting. He gets over 500 emails a day. 500. And on top of that, his team of 4 people write 100 stories a day. And when you're working at that pace, it's going to be impossible to read a press release in full. It's near impossible to read just a subject line in full. So you really need to stand out. Now, in my instance, he knows me now. He knows my name. He knows that I've spent time with him, learning what works for him, because at the end of the day, journalists are KPI'd on views and dwell time. They need stories that are going to get people in. So if you know exactly what their formula is, exactly what their tried and tested formula is, you can work to that. You can give them the stories that they need, because your content does need to work for them too. And in my case, putting a name to a face made all the difference. Because in just under 2 weeks, we got over 120 pieces of coverage, 120 links. And then we actually ended up having over 200 in a little less than a month. He gave us another 40 yesterday. Thank you, Neil. And then, of course, other outlets see that coverage, the coverage rolls in. So yes, media meets might be a little old-fashioned, but you can't deny it when it comes to numbers like that. And I get that some clients don't want you to count syndicate links. I understand that, but you can't deny the level of reach that all of those regional publications have. How many people are actually reading them? And if still you're saying, okay, I get it, but syndicates aren't really my thing, well, just look at your link intersect. Look at what publications you need to get links on, because all your competitors already have them. Give a journalist who works on that publication a call, ring them up, go out for a coffee with them, go out for lunch with them, find out what they want and how you can help them. So, with that said, let's do a brief little recap about why relationship building is so important with journalists. Well, it makes building media lists a lot easier when you already know them, right? One of the worst things about digital PR is when you've got to pull 500 journalists' names together and you've got to check each one is relevant to the story you're sending them. It's a ball ache, right? It's awful. But if you already know so many journalists, it's going to make it a lot easier and a lot quicker of a process. You know exactly what they want. You know if they're relevant or not. And I know something people in traditional PR are trying to get a lot better at is not spraying and praying when it comes to sending out emails to journalists. It's something digital PRs do often do. I know we're trying to get better, but let me tell you, traditional, they do not do that at all. They have such great relationships with all of these people already that they don't need to. They can send it out to 40 people who they've made friends with, and they're going to get the same amount of coverage as sending to 500 journalists in digital PR. And on top of that, of course, these journalists will be able to tell you why a story might not work for them. What's wrong with it? What was wrong with the release? What was wrong with the angle? They can give you that valuable feedback that will help you next time. Then, of course, as well, when you need a link in a time of need, they can pull through, as we mentioned. Or if they forgot to include a link in your story, if you're sending them that follow-up email saying, please, can you just pop that link in, they're far more likely to do it if they're your friend, if they're your mate, if you've gone out for lunch with them. They'll understand why getting a link is so important to you, and they're far more likely to pop it in. And of course, there's nothing like a press trip or an event. I get that they're not relevant to everyone, but if you've got some big company news to announce, maybe get a handful of journalists in a room together, right? Maybe sit them down, tell them the news, rather than spending time and money on creating assets, creating a landing page. Sometimes it's not that relevant. If you can sit them down and just talk to them about it, they're more likely to go home and write the story. And of course, that also means you get to renew those connections with those people you've already met, as well as building some new ones. So, now that you've got all that coverage from talking to journalists, let's talk a little bit about measurement. More specifically, let's talk about measurement that's not just about links. Because how does traditional actually show value without relying on a backlink profile? Now, we all know digital PR is super measurable. It's one of the main talking points when we go to new business pitches, right? You can see how measurable it is, but let me tell you a little story. I once got print coverage on page 3 of The Sun, and nobody in my agency cared. This was after page 3 of The Sun stopped being about just topless women. I would like to clarify that. This was actually a campaign about bold men, so take what you want from that news. But I got print coverage on page 3 of The Sun. Nobody in my agency cared because it wasn't a link. It wasn't going towards my KPI, right? But there is still so much value when links aren't involved. Because we often talk about brand awareness as sort of a side product of digital PR. But what does it actually mean? And how can we measure it? Well, let me get one thing clear. AVE is super outdated. AVE is what I associate with people ripping out print coverage from a newspaper, photocopying it, putting it in a booklet, and your KPI being how loud the thud was when you dropped the folder down on the table. It's really not relevant anymore. The real key to measurement in traditional PR is setting clear goals, preferably clear goals that align with wider business goals. You need to ask clients what their business goals and ambitions actually are, because when your PR goals equate with that, it's going to make showing the value of your PR work a lot easier. So what exactly should you actually measure? Well, the key things are the outtakes and the outcomes. Outtakes are your numerical values, your number of tweets, your engagement, your branded searches, your coverage, your links. Outcomes, however, are the overall impact. It's something we often overlook. I'm talking about awareness, behavioural changes. Because don't forget, PR campaigns can change behaviours. We do have that power to change perceptions. Now, a great way to measure outcomes is to measure behaviours and awareness before, during, and after a campaign as well. Because it's going to give you that real evidence that demonstrates value of how perceptions have changed over time. Now, probably the best way to do that is surveys, but I totally understand they're expensive, so it's not always feasible for everyone. An alternative is just thinking about sentiment analysis versus your competitors. Think about your share of voice. Think about how many positive articles you have in correlation to them that month. And then also just have a look about where your brand mentions are in a story. Are you just a line right at the bottom? Are you at the top? Do people actually realise that the story is connected to your brand? Do they get the point that this story came from you? Because if not, what's the point? If they don't understand what you were trying to say with your campaign or that it was related to you, does it really matter? Sure, you've got a link, but is it relevant to your brand? I could go on about measurement for a little while, but if you've not already heard of AMEC, AMEC, I highly recommend you check them out. They've got a lot of free resources out there. Their integrated evaluation framework is a really valuable tool that can really help you understand what you could be doing to sort of help elevate how you measure, particularly when you're not just thinking about links. Now, there are, of course, these are just some of the ways that you can measure more traditional outcomes from your PR campaigns. It can help you demonstrate value beyond those usual metrics of links and social shares, and it really helps you delve deeper into the purpose of the campaign and the messaging behind it. But all of that said, links are obviously still really important. Because one of the best things about digital PR, like we've said, is it's measurable. All I'm saying is that these traditional techniques can help you amplify what you're already doing and help you go to just add wider value. So whilst I have learned a lot of traditional PR tips since my time at TUI, they can be applied to digital PR strategies. There's a lot that you digital guys can teach traditional PRs too. So for the love of God, please teach them. Teach them about backlink profiles. Tell them about diversifying the outlets that they have coverage on. Tell them about your link gap analysis. Tell them how it helps SEO. Because a lot of them don't understand it. No one sat them down before and told them what SEO is actually about. And at the end of the day, there's plenty that we can all learn from each other in both traditional and digital PR. So, we've made it to the end. Thank you for staying with me in this very, very hot room. I hope you've learnt something. And I just had to include a Taylor Swift gif in the end as a way of manifesting that I get tickets for the Eras tour in a couple of weeks. Thank you.